Stompin Tom Connors is no doubt a Canadian legend. But what kind of legend? What of his history, his memory, his legacy? Where in the hierarchy of legends do we place this unique singer-songwriter? This week, let's have a look at the real chairman of the board. I'm Larry Fedoruk, and this is Later That Same Life. On each episode of my weekly podcast, a different topic, discussion, commentary, or story from our lives.
Season 21, Chapter 7, Stompin Tom Connors.
The great Stompin Tom Connors. If you're not Canadian, I'll fill you in as we go along. But he just popped into my mind the other day for no apparent reason. It wasn't his birthday, February 9th, 1936, not the anniversary of his passing, March 6, 2013, at age 77. There wasn't a big hockey game anywhere, where the hockey song might be playing on some medium, and it seeped into my subconscious. Incidentally, part of the magnificence of Tom's talent is that when he wrote a song about hockey, he called it the hockey song. Not the good old hockey game or he shoots, he scores. None of that. The song about hockey is the hockey song. His song about snowmobiles is called the snowmobile song. The one about ketchup? The ketchup song. Why get tangled up in hidden meanings or complicated metaphors? Just tell it like it is. That's the beauty. Anyway, there wasn't any random social media post about him or some news story, nothing. He just popped into my head for no apparent reason. I'd like to be remembered like that, fondly, every once in a while, for no apparent reason. That would be very complimentary. Doctors do have a name for this. It's simply spontaneous or intrusive thoughts. These uninvited notions apparently are the byproduct of an active brain. Experts say you shouldn't try and overanalyze them. Unless they become dark and constant, they're really pretty harmless. I get them all the time, all kinds. And spontaneously remembering Stompin Tom Connors was one of the fun ones. And that's what got me thinking about him and his legacy. Stompin Tom Connors was never part of the Canadian music establishment, the elite. He was not lauded like a Leonard Cohen or a Gordon Lightfoot. Never really achieved the international acclaim. Heck, for years, barely recognized and respected within Canada. No young, struggling musician ever dreamed of one day growing up to be Stompin Tom Connors. But he was still very much the poet, the picker, the prophet, and the preacher. Not that much of a problem when he was stoned. Oh, sure, he obviously had a following, but I think he was underappreciated musically for most of his career. He didn't really fit into any slot. We are fond of trying to categorize our music stars. Where would we put Stompin Tom Connors? Kind of country, for sure. That's what he wanted to be, a country star. But also sometimes folk. Certain songs had a rockabilly feel. And there was that East Coast, Celtic, Acadian, Cajun hybrid sometimes. What category was Stompin Tom in? Apparently, the Stompin Tom category. Although his musical style may be tough to define, I think I have the perfect word for what Stompin Tom himself was. He was a troubadour. A troubadour, historically, is a traveling poet-musician. Today it refers to any wandering singer-songwriter who writes and performs his own heartfelt lyrics. That's him, right? Lots of people make music. There's a lot of media music content, but we don't have too many troubadours left. Stompin Tom Connors was born, as I said, February 9th, 1936, in St. John, New Brunswick, as Charles Thomas Connors. His formative years are a very sad story, worth noting. Connors was his mother's surname. His father, Thomas Joseph Sullivan, was not married to Isabel Connors at the time and was largely absent in those years. When Tom was born, his parents were both teenagers, around 18. His father's family were devout Irish Catholic, although his father may have had some roots in Métis or Micmac, and that family did not want him to marry Isabel Connors, a Protestant. So the father just left. Isabel couldn't afford a place to live. Tom's first home was a house in the poorest and most run-down part of St. John. He lived there with his mother, his maternal grandmother, and step-grandfather. When Tom was 3, his grandparents both died within weeks of each other, forcing his mother to find a run-down apartment for the two of them. Around this time, his mother, Isabel, got pregnant again. Tom's father briefly returned, and once again he didn't stay. Tom got his first taste of hitchhiking. He always said his mother taught him to hitchhike. That's the method they used to travel the province visiting relatives. During these travels, Tom recalls it was the first time he saw his mother steal food in order to feed them, and it wasn't the last time she had to resort to this. They couldn't afford a place of their own, so they moved around a lot. They stayed with friends in St. John at one point. That's when Isabel gave birth to Tom's sister, Marie. Eventually, they moved in with Isabel's new boyfriend, one Terence Messer. They both took on his surname as the couple pretended to be married to satisfy the community mores of the day. Terence Messer was a neglectful stepfather. Both he and Isabel took part-time menial jobs. Terence, though, spent most of that money on wine. After missing a few rent payments, they were evicted. Also, when Tom was 4, his sister Marie died during surgery in hospital to remove several birthmarks, a common practice in the day, as those birthmarks were considered diseased and dangerous. They moved to a smaller place, but were evicted again after Tom started a fire in the apartment. Remember stealing food to feed the family? Well, Isabel was eventually caught and sentenced to a brief term in a low-security women's penitentiary. For a short time, that's where Tom lived with her. That's when Children's Aid stepped in and took Tom. He was eventually adopted out to a family in Prince Edward Island. At age 13, Tom Connors ran away from his adoptive family and hitchhiked across Canada. He also traveled in boxcars. And remember, this is circa 1949-1950. He bought his first guitar at age 14, teaching himself basic chords and learning more from people he met along the way. He hitchhiked and railed back and forth across the country for the next 13 years, busking where he could, often literally singing for his supper. During the coldest parts of the Canadian winter, he welcomed being arrested for vagrancy, because jail at least meant a warm place to sleep for the night. Famously, in the summer of 1964, Tom was in Timmins, Ontario. He ordered a beer at a hotel bar, but realized he was a nickel short of the 35 cents. It was the Maple Leaf Hotel. So Tom said to the bartender, "Never mind about that beer. I'm off to the Sally Ann," which is what we commonly call the Salvation Army. Instead, the bartender, Gétien Lepine, accepted the 30 cents and even offered Tom a second beer if he would take out his guitar and play a few songs. What followed was a 14-month run playing at the hotel. He packed the place several nights a week. He got a weekly gig at the local Timmins radio station. Also 8 45 RPM vinyl recordings that the station had pressed, which eventually got regional airplay. Not only did he pack the hotel pub every night, but Tom started to get gigs in the surrounding area. As Tom said, within a month, he had a car and a new guitar. This was the real beginning of his career. Incredible story, isn't it? Kid of abject poverty, childhood trauma, certainly no hope for a future, simply went out on his own at age 13, learned the guitar, and carved out a life for himself. So funny that in the early 60s, when Bob Dylan hit the New York City folk scene, he brought stories about himself to conceal his Midwest middle-class Jewish upbringing, framing himself as an orphan, an outlaw who rode the rails, a hobo with a guitar. He did none of that. All of it was fabricated, lies. As it turns out, you know who actually lived that fake Bob Dylan life? Stompin Tom.
Because I had such a bad younger life, I never had a place I could call home. I had this wanderlust to look for something, look for a better place. I wanted to see other places. I wanted to see what people were all about. And I I think this is where my strong Canadian nationalism comes from, because I found nice people here, nice people there, all over the place. And then I guess Canada became an extended family to me. That became my family.
He has often said his musical inspiration was, in fact, his mother. And it's not that she played any instrument, but that as a kid, he remembered he would watch her holding a broom as a guitar, standing in front of the mirror, singing all the country hits of the day. I'm thinking that would be one of the few joys of her life. But it did inspire Tom to buy his first guitar. In 2008, he released a song called The Ballad of Stompin Tom, an autobiographical musical journey of his life. I can't really play any of it here because the podcast might be blocked, but check it out. It's quite poignant and moving. The Ballad of Stompin Tom. It's one of his best, but I wished he'd just call it the Stompin Tom song. Tom had this habit as he played of aggressively stomping his left foot on the barroom floor to keep time. As a solo act with a guitar, that would have been his rhythm section, I guess. On July 1st, 1967, how perfect, huh? Canada's 100th birthday. Tom was playing a gig at the King George Tavern in Peterborough, Ontario, and a pub waiter, Boyd McDonald, brought him on stage as Stompin Tom Connors. Tom liked that nickname so much, he kept it. He actually had it registered in Ontario within a week. Over the following months, venue owners began to complain about the damage Stompin Tom's cowboy boot left heel left on the stage. His solution was to begin to carry his own piece of plywood, usually about 2 by 3 feet, 1/2 inch to 5/8 thick. He took to buying a big 4 by 8 sheet of plywood and having it cut into 4 stomp-worthy pieces. One board never lasted more than a few gigs. Tom never kept count of how many boards he used. Now they just say there were countless boards over the course of his performing career. How many trees died, do you think, so that we could have Stompin Tom music? That is actually doable. I figured it out. A good-sized lumber tree can actually make 20 standard sheets of plywood. 20 sheets equals about 80 stomping boards. 80 stomping boards would last a good year in an active touring schedule. If Tom toured actively for 20 years, that's 20 trees. A small grove. Not bad. Good use of wood, I think. And isn't it interesting that first bartender in Timmins, Gaetian Lapine, and that waiter who named him Stompin in Peterborough, Boyd McDonald, are remembered by name, as they should be. They're not just some bartender or that waiter guy, both instrumental in Stompin Tom's career, but as real people with real names. That, to me, is Stompin Tom remembering these people and placing them in his history, people that were important to him. That's part of the guy he was. By 1970, Tom had his first hit songs on the radio. Big Joe Muffera, the Ketchup Song, Ketchup Loves Potatoes, and of course the Snowmobile Song. The following year was Bud the Spud, Tilsonburg, and the Moon Man Newfie. Oh yeah, you might think it's goofy, but the man in the moon is a newfie. In 1973, the Hockey Song. It was 1973 that Tom began to tour with a small band, the Rovin' Cowboys, famously appearing in the live concert special of 1973, Across This Land, recorded at Toronto's Horseshoe Tavern. Oh, by the way, Sudbury Saturday Night originally came out on an album in 1967, but it was re-released as a single years later and became the hit we know today. Few may remember that in 1972, Stompin Tom Connors did the opening theme of the CBC investigative news series Marketplace. His song was called The Consumer. Tom even appeared during the show's opening credits.
The consumer, they call us. We're the people that buy. While everyone else is out to sell some kind of merchandise, we run to the boss and tell him we need a bit more gold, some tax deductions later, and we still wind up in the hole. Oh yes, we are the people running in the race, buying up the bargains in the old marketplace. Another sale on something, we'll buy it while it's hot. and save a lot of money spending money we don't got. We save a lot of money spending money we don't got.
After a few seasons, the song was replaced. Stompin' Tom Connors was not without his controversy. In 1979, he announced a retirement from the music industry. It was a protest that cited lack of support for the Canadian music industry, a lack of CRTC regulations, and the Americanization of Canadian media. He even returned his Juno Awards and nominations. He retreated to his farm about a half an hour northeast of Guelph, Ontario, and his protest lasted a decade. In 1990, he made a triumphant return with the announcement of a 70-city Canadian tour. This time, his band was called Whiskey Jack, who he continued to record and tour with sporadically up until his passing in 2013. After the tour, Connors released a platinum-selling greatest hits album and published a 2-volume memoir. In 2002, Stompin' Tom received an invitation to dine with the Queen, Elizabeth II, at Rideau Hall in Ottawa when she was visiting Canada. Tom refused to remove his signature black Stetson, eventually claiming it was like a religious headgear, like a Sikh turban or something. He was allowed to keep it on. Don't you just love that? In 2004, when Conan O'Brien did a week's worth of late night in Canada, Tom was one of his featured guests. He led a Toronto audience in a rendition of the hockey song. Notably, in 2005, Tom spent $200,000 of his own money to stage a live show in Hamilton, Ontario. This was after the CBC expressed interest in airing a live concert special with him as the star. After it was all done, the tape was submitted to CBC's head of variety programming, who turned him down. They passed on it, saying that the network was getting away from this type of show. You may remember Tom then publicly slammed the CBC for breaking a deal. The film did come out later on DVD, and a CD soundtrack of the show was released after his passing. Again, Stompin' Tom Connors passed March 6, 2013, of kidney failure. Tom was legendary as a heavy smoker and drinker, right up till the end. In the touring days, he was the last one to bed and the first one at the gig the next day, and he expected his band to keep up the same pace. Tom was survived by his wife, Lena Welsh, whom he had married back in 1973. She actually worked as a barmaid in one of the places that Tom and the Roving Cowboys were playing. The couple actually made Canadian television history when they were married live on national television during an episode of Elwood Glover's CBC talk show, Luncheon Date. He did remove his hat for his wedding ceremony. Stompin' Tom is also survived by 2 sons, 2 daughters, and several grandchildren. If you are wondering, Tom's mother, Isabel Connors, lived until 2007, so she saw his success. As a teenager, Tom did reconnect with her in St. John, although they didn't really have a consistent relationship after that. Tom is buried next to her in Erin, Ontario. His father is likely deceased. No one knows for sure. Kind of lost track of him. The great Stompin' Tom Connors. He's a legend. And how do we honor him? Well, we still play his music. He did get an Order of Canada, a Governor-General Arts Award, SOCAN Lifetime Achievement Award, a few honorary degrees from universities, Dr. Stompin' Tom Connors, Doctor of Letters. He declined to be inducted into the Canadian Country Music Hall of Fame, but that was back in 1993. I guess he was still pissed about a lot of things then. In Sudbury, there's a 600-pound bronze statue with Tom posed in a Stetson holding a guitar. Kudos to the sculptor. Tom's left hand is in a C minor chord. That is the dominant chord of the song Sudbury Saturday Night. Nice piece of detail. They are currently discussing a statue to be erected in his birth city of St. John. And remember I said Tom was adopted to a family in PEI? Well, they lived in the town of Skinner's Pond. And that's where you will find the official Stompin' Tom Connors Museum. All kinds of artifacts, including some of the very early stomping boards. How do you find the museum? Take Stompin' Tom Road. There's also a monument and plaque in Erin near his farm in Ontario. Awards, honors, statues, museum, that ain't bad. That's a decent legacy. I guess the rest is up to us individually, how we each remember him, as he might randomly pop into our thoughts. The troubadour, a one-of-a-kind, deserving of the term legend, worth remembering, even if suddenly and for no reason. Maybe I was having ketchup. Maybe that's what happened. Yeah, that's probably it.
Later That Same Life is written, voiced, and produced by Larry Fedoric. Larry Fedoric, 37, at gmail.com. Subscribe to Larry's YouTube channel. Get automatic notifications with each new episode.